All right, GM, give me just a second, guys. Got to get something set up real quick. If you would like to join the conversation, by the way, feel free to hit that request button. I will bring you guys up here in just a second. If not, I got plenty to talk about today as well. My man Crow, what is going on? Actually, shoot, he's still connecting.
What's good? What's good, my brother? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. It's been an interesting week. Lots of positive things, lots of crazy things with the market as well. I mean, shoot, even with the stonks this week with everything happening with King Degen, but we'll get into all that stuff, like that's part of the game.
It is part of the game. I appreciate the positivity and the message. The group text, nobody was losing their mind or freaking out, so I think that's bullish.
I agree, man. I mean, I think it's one of those things where, if you're hopping on and you're not sure what I'm talking about. So one of the largest holders of the stonks ended up liquidating his entire position the other day into blur bids. And it's one of those things, man, where it's tough to see, not necessarily just because you see like whatever the price go down, but I think King Degen's one of those guys that actually does believe like in the project itself. And I think he got himself into a bad position just with what it looks like overextending himself on margin. I'm assuming there was some type of liquidate. He was also selling his apes, selling some other stuff, basically liquidating everything that he could. And, again, you hate seeing it from that perspective. But at the same time, man, like, I think what it does, it provides a lot of opportunity as well, right? Where, realistically, again, going back to my whole thesis with NFTs, with where the market is right now in general, like what is the difference between 0.06 ETH and, 0.05 ETH, zero point 0.1 ETH, right? Like at this point in time, the real difference is, it is a barrier to entry for some people to be able to get in at a little bit of a higher price. I do think that it allows for that opportunity. There were also some solid stonks that were put back on the floor with it. So it also gives the opportunity to be able to collect quality. And, again, looking at where we were like last year, for instance, right? Dude, I think there was a point where the stocks got down to like 0.02 something, right? And in the midst of something that wasn't even the bull market, right, we were able to rally off that floor back to like nearly 0.4 pretty easily whenever volume across the board picked up. So I really think it's one of those same type of situations where, you look at where we are right now, it doesn't take much volume to really be able to drive that type of PA whenever it happens, right? So I think in the meantime, again, everybody looks at floor price and it's easy to let that be the single metric that weighs in your mind. But I don't really think anything else has effectively changed, right? Like it's not a huge community shift. It's one person exiting a position. So and like, again, it's not exiting a position because of anything related to the project specifically, but exiting the position because of some forced necessity from some degen, again, living up to the name, degen tendencies elsewhere. So, I mean, I'm as bullish as ever, man. I'm as bullish as ever on you guys. Love the, just the attitude that I've seen so far with everything with that. Like, dude, it's not a big deal. There are some other positive developments too. Like, I love what Batstu has done. I actually want to try to get together with him and do like a co-space with him because I love other people just recognizing the fact that art is in the charts, right? Like when I saw him say that, I'm like, that's incredible, because it gives more provenance to the art and the history behind the stonks and behind the thought process. And like, I may be biased here, but I still think when you look at both TradFi lines, you look at Stonks, you look at the Batstew collection, I really do believe that out of all of them, not only does Stonks have the most history behind it, I also think they have the best art as well. As far and on top of that, the greatest level of complexity when you look at the traits and the features behind that. So, again, like I think there were some cool things on that development as well this week. So I'm excited, man. I think there, again, a lot of good things to look forward to this year.
Kaleo, let me ask: has anyone found the chart that matches to match King Degen's on-chain activity?
um, there's some out there, man. There's some out there that go straight down. So I think they exist. You can filter by return, and it's a good way of finding. But I think that the stock with the lowest return is like -80% or something off the top of my head, without opening up the collection, looking through the traits. That's funny, man.
Well, let me tell you, I've experienced similar in working through, working with a project and having a large collector, floor or dump into, bids of no fault or doing of your own. And I mean, kudos to you. There's few enough projects from, way back when that are still around, still chugging. So regardless, it's not off of any, foundational principles or anything materially changing for sake of the project. Sometimes, shit happens, and one of the parts of having this, sovereignty and agency of these, digital asset ownership is sometimes they can, do as they please, and it just so happens to not reflect so great when you look at the charts, but it doesn't make it, a reflection on the project.
I appreciate that, man. That like again, it's encouraging to hear that type of feedback, and again, I think it's just one of those things that like it comes with the territory of the space, right? You don't like nothing in this space is up only 100% of the time, right? Like there are a lot of things that have developed out of this space that have taken, I mean, heck, even look at punks, right? Like look at punks whenever there were years from the origination and the release before there was any real recognition behind it. And I understand, like obviously the history behind punks and what really led them there in the first place. But point being, there were years where people were called crazy, right, for holding or doing whatever else with them. And like, I still think that we're in that same position with the NFT space in general, right? Like if you look across the board, the majority of collections, right, are in that boat where you're called crazy for holding anything, right? Like, and obviously there's some things that, but like when you look at 99% of the collections across the board, that's still the average sentiment to the average person when you talk about anything with NFTs. So you have to be a little bit crazy to enter this space. If you've been through it right now, like you've experienced extreme volatility. You've seen the ups and the downs. So it really just comes down to the point of belief. Do you really believe that there is a directional future for this asset class, or do you not? And again, like I understand where sentiment is tied closely to price. Like it's a natural human reaction. But at the same time, man, I think like again, anything that is declared dead, what more can you do to it? Like, when you're looking at NFTs and you declare that asset class dead, like the media has when it was in September, when I saw several articles, like, from TikTok on Barstool or whatever else, where there were different people, again, like people love dunking on the NFT bros. Like there will be a day, and I don't think it'll just be a day. I think it'll be another multi-year stretch where the activity behind NFTs, not only will it be significant, but I think it'll blow out of the water anything that we saw from the previous cycle. So I think it's about one of those things where it is about not just staying sane, but staying insane long enough to be able to believe in that.
Well, could I challenge you or push back for
Yeah,
maybe a little more specificity there? Because yeah, I appreciate that you're talking generally, broadly about the market, but I would say in reflection of NFTs, it's not one size fits all, and there's plenty of people that just gamble on projects even that they may not see that vision and that future for, just on the basis of number go up. But I do think that what you highlighted there, at least in my mind, is that if you have that conviction and that belief specifically in a project's future, then as long as you're comfortable with your price of entry, the short-term volatility doesn't necessarily affect or impact you as much. But that there are plenty of people that do not have that conviction in the future of the projects that they may be gambling on.
yeah, no, that's fair, man. Completely fair. And um, I think more so what I was pointing to with the broader aspect is saying that, okay, if you have a project that you're confident in, and again, there's no guarantee that any project specifically will ever have that reaction. But as far as having a higher likelihood to have, whatever level of success, like when the market as a whole is trending in a certain direction, right? Like you go through waves, I think, of volume in this space, right? One of the things that people harp on about NFTs is just a lack of liquidity in the space, and they do operate differently when you're talking about collecting something rather than trading some type of utility based token that is fractionalized to whatever extent that you've got the AMMs for, that you've got whatever else going on in these liquidity pools. So there is a difference whenever you look at when you look at that. But I it's like what we saw again. We've seen these waves where it doesn't take much volume as an effect of that lack of liquidity, whatever you want to call it. It works both directions, right? Like heavier sell pressure, but also, like whenever you're talking about movement off of a base, whenever something does begin to trend, it doesn't take as much to be able to get things moving as well.
It's like you
So,
could look at it as a detriment or a feature, not a bug, because that illiquidity is also what enables it to be so reflexive when things do start to move.
no, exactly. So, yeah, man. But, point being with all of that, like, that nothing has changed over the course of the past couple weeks. Like, I'm still incredibly bullish on everything right now moving forward. And, again, I thought one of the funnier things too, whenever I saw the Bat Stew collection drop, is that like he did have zero familiarity with the Stonks again whatsoever. So I really am excited, like just reading when I was reading through a bunch of the different comments on his collection as different people saw it, like it hyped me up even more for the potential of this moving forward. Because again, it just shows that people do love the art, like behind the charts, right? Like the idea of it being a generative process and being something that collectors that may not have had the visibility to the stonks yet are seeing. I think it's one of those things that's just growing the category of the niche in the space, right? Like, whenever the stonks dropped as something to do it, there was nobody else that really did anything similar. So now that you have a couple other collections that are starting to add a bit more provenance, I really think that you're going to see more of a snowball effect. The more projects there are that are in that similar category, like the more bullish it is for that category as a whole, right? Like, it's not, I don't think it's the opposite effect where you look and you're like, oh shoot, somebody copied the idea, and like, shame on them for just like, it's not that at all. I think honestly, again, whether he knew about the stonks or not, I love the idea that somebody else is out there making art of charts, because I think that charts are art inherently. So yeah, man, that hyped me up whenever I saw that drop a few days ago, or I guess was it yesterday, whatever the tweet was that I saw. Pick God, what's up, man?
Not much, Kaleo. Hope you're doing well, man. Just chilling here. Easy Friday at work. Not many people in, but yeah, man. I mean, I was saying it in the chat last night, dude. Um, like minting stonks, obviously first NFT, not really knowing what to expect. I had zero clue, like, the impact that charts were gonna have on my life, like these last 2 years. So like, I'm in the same camp as you, seeing other people do it. It's pretty cool. Like, the only other guy I really think about who has chart art is Jack Butcher, and his stuff is a little more simpler. But it's I'm sure people will realize here over the next year the resonation, I guess, of chart art, especially on CT. Man, I feel like it. As we say, it's inevitable.
Yeah, you're right. I completely forgot to drop Jack Butcher in that as well, with dropping one of his recent collections, right? So you've got Jack Butcher that has a collection that, is inspired by chart art. You've got Bat Stew that has a collection. You've got the TradFi lines, with the ordinal inscriptions, that the sub 10K ordinal inscription collect that comes along with that as well. So yeah, man, like, you've got several, I think, over the course of the past year, several more prominent artists slash collections have come out and have really, looked at it. And again, I really think that it's one of those things, the more that you have in that category, the more people recognizing charts as art. Because that was one of the things too, that a lot of people, whenever the stonks first dropped, you had this real split, and it was either people just immediately got it or they didn't. And a lot of people were like, man, well, I mean, heck, like the KJ crypto meme, right? The Korean Jew crypto, where he was like, why would I buy a JPEG of a chart? I look at these all day, right? So there's some people that are in that camp where they, but like, that also comes from the perspective of somebody that's not a real JPEG type of enthusiast. But point being, you do have that split where you have some people that can't really see that right now. But again, I'm telling you, um, as more projects like this start to drop in the space, I love to see it, man. It's one of those things where I am all for anybody else running with something, not necessarily even talking about derivatives, but just talking about, because I'm biased here, obviously, but I think that stonks are the best project as far as both the art, the traits, the complexity, everything else in this individual niche amongst all of these artists. So yeah, like, there will be a time that I still believe that is universally recognized. So, and again, maybe I'm crazy, but like, I think this space takes that little bit of craziness to make it. So, yeah. Mr. Crow, I'm curious, man. What all what all else have you been, what has been your sentiment this week after the ETF approval? I'm curious, have you had any random people, friends, work, family, anything else that have come up, had conversations with you about Bitcoin that maybe have called you crazy, that, like, I'm just curious what if there's a shift in sentiment from talking to the average person about this in y'all's day-to-day life versus, what I guess what you've seen even over the past couple months.
I mean, I think everybody's tired of hearing me talk about it, honestly. A couple friends have texted me about it. I was getting an oil change last night, and it was cool seeing it on the news, CSNBC or whatever, talking about the Bitcoin ETF. So I've seen a lot of posts about it's free advertising for us all. And I'm thinking once people get a taste of the crypto gains, like it's going to naturally, bleed into everything else, right? Yeah, I couldn't be more excited. It's really a big deal for us.
Yo, Crow, I'm just going to add, man, Yak had a great tweet today saying, like, one of the best things about Bitcoin was, it had no advertising budget until now. The guys who were hating on us for the last couple of years are our advertisers, free of charge, of course.
Yeah, the big money is going to be pumping our bags, man. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's I think there are a lot of people that are still discounting the long term. I don't want to say a lot of people, but I do think it's interesting even seeing a few red candles and seeing just the shift in sentiment on the timeline. Um, you know, just after a couple red candles. It's insane. And I think a big reason behind that is it's not necessarily that so many people have shifted their opinions. It's just the level of confidence between the people that are talking, right? Like it's natural that people that are more bullish when you see price go down are going to be more quiet than the people that are bearish. So the people that as price was going up that were bearish, I mean, you're not seeing as many of those comments on the timeline um, intuitively, because again, it's going against their thesis. So why would they be backing their thesis while while the price is proving them wrong? So I think that there's just this mental aspect of it where you've got a bunch of these bears that are dormant in a sense. And that has become a little bit of a louder narrative on the timeline where, I even posted something about the fact that just kind of laughing toward any bears that might say, man, the bull run is over with a few more red candles. And I got a couple of comments on there, and I said that like when the real bull run hasn't even started yet. We're still a few months away from the halving. I'm a big believer in the cycles. I'm a big believer still in the fundamental effect of the halving, even though there is a diminishing return with, obviously the nature of the supply, the effect being cut in half each time. And I had a guy that commented on there that he was like, dude, I don't think that it's going to have an effect anymore, right? Going back to the diminishing returns argument. And while I agree to a certain extent that there are diminishing returns, I just don't think we're at the point where the effect is going to be negligible quite yet. Right. And I do think there's something to be said just for the market psyche and the overall level of consumer confidence when you look at the effect that the halving has had in the past. I think the overall confidence level that people get by just knowing, shoot, look at what this did 4 years ago. Look at what it did 4 years before that. When you just look through the overall cyclical effect, I don't think that in and of itself is insignificant. So, yeah, I mean, heck, even a reduction of 3.75 BTC per day of emissions is a reduction of close to $10 billion annually at the current price, right? Current price range. So, like, you're, and $10 billion of sell pressure naturally makes a difference still. Like, I don't care if the asset class is $900 billion, $10 billion of direct sell pressure per year, I think makes a difference. So, yeah, we'll see, man. But I think that realistically, moving forward, as far as BTC is concerned, we probably chop in this range underneath 50K. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if it's for the next 6 months, man. Maybe it's less than that. Maybe we bounce and just send immediately, but I think it takes a little bit of consolidation. And I still expect new all-time highs later in this year, right? Like, I don't think that it's going to be one of those things where it's an immediate effect, but good things take time.
I mean, that's healthy, right? Like, we don't want it to go straight up.
I agree. It's almost nice being able to have a little bit of a breather right now because whenever everything's going straight up, man, like it takes a toll on you. As much as things going down can take a toll on you, when things go down, everything moves a little bit slower, right? When things are going up, it is just, it is adrenaline fueling you 24/7. You're constantly like you wake up in the middle of the night, you're checking your phone to see whatever the prices are of whatever's happening, right? Like you are running on adrenaline and that takes a toll. So it's almost nice kind of going into this stretch. I look at it as I'm like, all right, we've got one last little breather before the real fun begins. So yeah, man, I'm one of those crazy people that thinks we're still just at the tip of the iceberg as far as what we're going to see from a social activity level as well. So VGF / Pick God, I'm curious from y'all's perspective, have you guys had any combos with normies that aren't necessarily CT based after the halving? Has anybody's opinion on Bitcoin / crypto / your position in it changed at all over the course of the past week?
Maybe not the last week. I think so. I'm generally not a trader. Like I've come to terms with the fact that I am just not the strongest trader in the world. So my mid to long term strategy has basically just been DCAing for the last, call it 2 years. And so, looking back, they thought I was crazy at the time. It looks a little less crazy now. But I have definitely had, some more people over the last, maybe couple months reaching back out to be like, hey, so what's going on with that? You still working in crypto? You still, what's going on with all that crypto stuff? What's going on with Bitcoin? The curiosity, I think, has started coming back. And, with the whole ETF and TradFi, I think it gives it a little bit of a form of validation, at least in the broader public size, that like, okay, maybe it's all not just degenerate gambling. To be clear, it's still a lot just degenerate gambling, but that maybe there is something here. And so that's been a pleasant surprise, is maybe not, just the speculative aspects, but, some of the more conservative ends of the spectrum saying like, oh, okay, maybe, something is going on over here.
I love that, man. I agree with you. I think that's one of the things that is nice as far as just like, maybe it hasn't hit people quite yet in those terms, but there is a big difference. Like definitely in the way that Bitcoin is talked about now versus, heck, even a few years ago, right? Because I remember the beginning of the last bull market. If you look at the difference in sentiment, beginning of the last bull market, I even think the Feds, like, they were really brushing off the potential for BTC and for crypto as a whole, right? I think that they thought that it had already died off after the COVID crash, and that the COVID crash almost proved that it was a dead asset. And they didn't really need to worry and focus on it in the same level. And it didn't really take until it was approaching and expanding past new all-time highs to say, oh, shoot, maybe there is something here. But it was still just seen as this complete speculative hedge, And now you're almost getting from the same people that were saying, I don't know if we can trust this. You're almost saying, yeah, Bitcoin is a solid asset class, right? And that is a complete different sentiment than where we are at this point, or where we were at this point 4 years ago. So, people are recognizing what it is, the potential that it does have. I still think it's insane that you've got people like Kathy Wood, dude. I'm a bullish person, but $600,000 as a base case in the next couple of years, that's And like I think she said 1 point something million as the bullish case. Dude, that's even more than what I've got. But point being, you've got people that are in the spotlight that are these respected fund managers that are even out there saying this type of stuff. So VGF, I'm curious, man, what else are you working on right now?
To be honest, I haven't had my eyes on the market for a good little while. I've kind of just had my head down working. I'm still with Pixel Vault. We just launched a protocol for skill-based gaming on Arbitrum and our flagship game built on top of it. So that's Reboot and Battle Plan. And for those that may have been along for the ride, we minted the collection in summer of 21 with the aspiration of delving into blockchain gaming, and this was the fulfillment of that promise, if anything to a grander scale than we originally intentioned. Because like as we started to conceptualize and develop the game, we ran into a lot of problems, into how does a game developer integrate with certain blockchain mechanics, certain mint mechanics, that as like a traditional game developer you may not have an in-house Web3 team to manage these kind of things for you. And so we developed kind of an ecosystem in a box, one for ourselves, but then to make it open source and decentralized so that anyone can go and then build on it for themselves. And then to launch our game on top of it, I believe it's now like 2 weeks ago. Maybe it's a week ago, a couple days ago, whatever. Timey-wimey, it's all a blur. But yeah, very excited about that. It's kind of the biggest 2 launches of the last 2 years for us. So pretty excited and proud about that.
So what does that launch look like for you? Or are you busier now that the product is finally out there? Or are you a little bit of a weight lifted off your back where you're just kind of like, all right, let's just see how this thing flies. We've got to work, troubleshoot whatever is happening with XYZ, busier because you've got more users, obviously, that are out there with it.
A little bit of both. I mean, it was definitely a relief to get it, finally get it out there and get it public. We definitely kind of focused on our internal community first and foremost, kind of focusing on a Web3 native audience and our own existing community first. And then, we're like, once we iron out, some onboarding flows and things like that involve, custodial wallets and credit card on ramps and things like that, will expand that target audience quite a bit. But it's simultaneously like reaching the finish line on something because you've shipped it and it's out the door. But that doesn't mean the work is done. And if anything, has kind of reinvigorated some conversations, because I think it's brought some realization to some people of like, oh shit, they actually were working on some shit, and so that's been kind of cool to see, like a lot of old faces returning to the community, some new faces jumping in that maybe weren't as familiar and getting up to speed. It's definitely kind of brought some kind of validation in that, sometimes building dope shit takes a lot of fucking man hours by really passionate people to put it together and get it out the door. And so it was a long time coming. It did take a while, but it was definitely a project and product of passion. And we're definitely not done with it yet. We've already got a good chunk of the team working on later season features, season 2, things like that. And so we're definitely not quote unquote done with it, just because it's out the door. So it's definitely got grander aspirations than what is even currently available. But I was kind of like a stickler. My VGF stands for video game freak. Like, I'm a hardcore gamer, have been. It's what, like, the idea of sovereign digital asset ownership is like what brought me into Web3 and NFTs in the first place. But over the course of kind of the last 2 years, when people are like, "Oh, what Web3 games are you playing?" I was one of those people that are like, "Not really any, because most of them suck." So I'm very glad to now have kind of a shining example that I happen to be affiliated with, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it's just a fucking good game. Um, and so very excited to kind of get it more publicly out there. And we chose to go the route of not doing a lot of traditional marketing, not paying for sponsored spaces, not paying for paid content, and instead going the route of just putting some fucking badass prizes on the leaderboard and really juicy affiliate and referral rewards for kind of like that grassroots organic traffic. My belief is that that's a more sustainable avenue to introducing people that actually give a shit about your ecosystem and your game, instead of people that are just there to, try and play the hype. So it definitely not done. Still a lot of work to do.
So for anybody that's in here, is there like a free to play entry point where, you can start off without owning any asset necessarily, and then you kind of basically, like some of these other, like Fortnite or whatever, for instance, you've got potential purchases that you can then make after the fact. What is your model?
So there is a free to play version. It's kind of like a demo version that doesn't have any dollars or NFTs attached to it, just to like hop in and see whether or not you like the game. But also for the main, like the full featured game, no NFT assets are required. It's open to the public. But we do use kind of our arcade model. So like you would go to a traditional arcade, you put your quarter or your credits into the machine. Uh, we use a similar model, just with an ERC20 token. So GG is the token for Reboot for the arcade, and that's what kind of kickstarts the on-chain flow of value. And so it's on-chain skill-based matchmaking, on-chain skill ratings, on-chain payouts. And because it is all based on games of skill, it does, have that optionality for going in and playing at harder difficulties for higher multiplier of rewards. It's intended to be challenging because you're playing against people's real gameplay. And so the hardest difficulty, you have an opportunity of 6xing your tokens on the way in addition to qualifying for some pretty sick prizes. But yeah, I mean, I almost relate it to like daily fantasy sports. Like, you have to just because you put up something at stake doesn't mean you're going to lose all of it. On average, most people are getting most of what they put up at stake back in incentives and rewards. But so like, it's basically a $20 entry right now, catering to our kind of degen audience. But most people on average are getting most of that back. And then the most skilled players are earning more than that back. So we do have quite a few people that are just crushing the game right now and actually earning on that gameplay.
Dude, that's like I was checking through and scrolling through, looking at it as you were talking. It looks cool, man. I want to give it a shot, so I'm gonna do it this weekend.
Sweet, man. Yeah, definitely. Let me know what you think. The on ramp, like, you can either buy GG on the open market. It's all on Arbitrum, but we do have like an onboarding bundle where you can go and buy credits in ETH if you prefer that route. That's probably like the lowest friction avenue. But yeah, I mean, like, for me, I appreciate that people are just playing it as a fun game. before we went live, we had, our beta test where we had 800 play testers that were averaging in the hours of gameplay per day per player with no incentives, just for sake of playing the game. And so like that was, a pretty good indicator that like, oh shit, we're on to something. And so then we, you stack that on top of like the grand prize for season 1 is a fully loaded Tesla Cybertruck. There's multiple NFTs up for grabs of like a Pixel Vault Core, which is going for about 20 ETH. 5 Evo 7s, which is probably talking over a lot of people's heads, but there's current bids out on those of 30 ETH, and there's 5 of them to be given away. So there's definitely, some pretty juicy prizes at the end of the rainbow.
I like the arcade style graphics too, the old school arcade stuff. Like that is, I'm definitely going to give it a shot, my man.
Yeah, hit me up if you have any questions. I mean, that's literally my job, but happy to help ease that onboard flow if you have any questions.
No, I definitely will. And I apologize to you guys right now. I actually have to get going. My dad just got in town, and we've got some stuff. Like, unfortunately, I told you guys about that move. He's helping out. He's waiting for me outside right now.
That is not. I mean, it's unfortunate to us as the audience, but it's not unfortunate to you. Go spend time with family.
So, oh shoot! Right as Rooster gets on stage too. All right.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
I'll let him get up here real quick. I might be able to squeeze another 5 minutes out.
What the hell, dude? You gotta run this while I'm chauffeuring?
I know. Well, here's the issue. I was planning on doing it later in the day because originally my dad was coming later in the afternoon, I thought. And I got a text that he was coming early this morning. So I was like, shoot, I've got to get this running basically right now to be able to squeeze time out and make sure it happens. So RIP. And yeah, but we already covered, we went through the King Degen stuff. We went through, the Batstew stuff. We've gone through the full ringer. VGF was just explaining to me his game and project that he's part of the team of with the Reboot GG, which also sounds cool. So yeah, man, that's basically the rundown for anybody that missed the beginning part to listen back to.
We say more spaces, all of a sudden we get less spaces and less length of time spaces. It's the inverse.
RIP. Hey, episode 100. We'll do something. We'll do something cool for next week. We'll figure it out. DM me with some ideas. We need to do something cool.
Tell you what, Kaleo, I'm going to DM you with some ideas.
Hey, I've at least gotten you one DM back.
Dude, hey, I can't tell you. I saw that and I was like, oh my God,
Progress.
he did it. He freaking did it.
Progress.
No, I love it. I'm sorry I didn't catch this earlier. I freaking love these spaces. But when is the next one?
Next Friday for sure.
Okay, sick.
Who knows? Maybe I feel bad that I've done this without Rooster. So I'll need to do an impromptu one throughout the week too to make up for this.
Very nice. All right.
Yeah, even if no one else likes to hear me talk, I at least like to hear myself talk, dude.
Pick the day, man. I mean, hey, you know what you need to do, Rooster? What I don't get, you need to request to get up on more of these spaces and stages of some of the other things that are running out there. Anytime that I'm on a stage of another NFT thing, I see you sitting down there in the audience. I'm like, what the heck are you doing down there, dude? Like, you've got the voice to be able to get up on stage. You got to do it.
No, I haven't honestly tuned into many spaces. I did catch that late night one that you were in the other day, just because the notification popped up that you were speaking. For some reason, the X algo doesn't put like Leap Space or Thread Guy Space or like any spaces on my feed. I'd have to.
You've got to look at the For You page, because when I look, like, it doesn't show it anymore for some reason on the following page. So it's only on the For You page that you can see it at the top banner for your phone.
Yeah, no,
That
yeah,
threw me off for a
I
while
should
too.
hop up on some more spaces. I haven't. But I guess next time.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't give the Cube a minute to say something.
I'm
Mr.
just
Cube, what's up, man?
I'm gonna say Stonks. You go do your family stuff, man. Looking forward to the 100th episode. I'm not working next Friday. I'll be there.
Let's go. Love to hear it, man. All right. Well, we'll see you guys this next week, and we'll see you sometime in between. We'll do, Rooster, you DM me. Let me know the day, man. We'll do it. So,
Well, hold on. So what I'm hearing is Rooster is the route to Kalio's DMs. Rooster, I'll be sending you a message later, brother.
There's a
Tracto,
queue,
if you
my
saw
guy.
how many,
There's
I
a
don't
queue
even
for
think
that
100
route.
is the right word. If you saw how many thousands of messages,
Dude.
It's not just you, bro.
And that's what I understand. That's why I hate to be like a pesky person and like send more than one, but I know what it's like in my DMs, and the people that don't send more than one get left behind. Like, it's hard to keep up with everything.
I respect the grind. I really do. So, all right. Appreciate you guys rolling out. Enjoy I hope everyone enjoys their weekend. Wonky Stonks are inevitable, and we will see you guys next time.
Cheers, everybody. I'll be spending my next hour catching up on the past hour. So have a good one.